Welcome back to the 2-Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and before we jump into today's episode, recapping Game 4 of the NBA Finals, in quite a surprising manner or fashion, I guess you could say. We'll jump into it here in just a second. Before we do, we're joined by Grayson Hill, of course, for the NBA Finals shows. Don't forget, SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor of the 2-Pointers Podcast, including this episode, baseball, sporting events, concerts, whatever you're going to this summer, or even, you want to hang out and use the code later in the year for basketball, totally fine. Code 2-Pointers, $20 off your first purchase. Link in the top of the description gets you that as well. TWOPOINTERS. SeatGeek is an incredible ticketing app. We've appreciated their support over the last, it's now been, I think, close to almost 2 years. So greatly appreciate SeatGeek's support, as well as the support on using that code. Really does help us bring out better content around here and help support the show and help support me. So thank you very much for doing that. Wanted to get that out of the way so we could jump right into the NBA Finals here. And we're joined by Grayson Hill, as always. So before we get into what transpired last night, people have called like there's a famous game, the Memorial Day Massacre in Boston in the 80s there, I think against the Lakers. And we got to figure out some formality for by the end of this episode what the I don't know, the dead in Dallas or something like that. We got to figure out something because anyway, before we do that, Game 4 recap, NBA Finals, Grayson Hill's here. For those that for some reason are new here or aren't aware of who he is by now, I'll let him introduce himself before we jump right into it.
Like you said, my name is Grayson Hill. I've been doing this every game of the series. Hopefully, you'll go back and watch what we had for games 1 and 2. Please do not go back and watch what we said after game 3. None of it aged very well. So I jumped on in relief of Trevor's former co-host, Josh. 2 years ago in the finals, last year, we went live after all 5 games. Quick recaps, things like that. But we realized we like sleep. So now we're coming at you next day. Give some time for our thoughts to kind of form. And bring you guys a reaction to what we saw last night.
Yeah, the YouTube audience is getting to see the more exciting sporting event yesterday is on my head right now, the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, 124th or the 1000th USGA event. Been keeping up with that, obviously. Last night, once the sun went down, it didn't matter. The NBA Finals was on, but anyway, that was just a plug for the YouTube audience there. So anybody not on YouTube, come hang out over here. So, Game 4, all of my notes are in the first half, so we've got to kind of pick this apart a little bit. But I'm going to start with what's on the ticker. And as it gets to it, this is the third largest margin of victory, 38 points in NBA Finals history. I will, at some point in your opening monologue, I will go look up the other two because I think it'd be really funny to find out. But I really should, honestly, I should be editing in when the show goes out, like 2 big red noses right on the front of our faces, because we said that there was just like, I asked you, one of the questions I asked you in Game 3 was, is it over? Is it finally, okay, we trust this team? And our answer in a roundabout 38-minute or less way was, Boston's dominant. They're going to get this done. They're not going to change anything they've done. They're going to just figure it out. So what changed?
Every shot that I saw go in against my poor Thunder went in last night. And it wasn't even an explosion from PJ Washington. It wasn't 20 points from Derek Jones Jr. It was just a collective improved effort from the guys that are not on the promo banners. Like I mentioned, Luka, Kyrie did what they needed to do. Neither one of them played very long. No one of note played very long in this game. It was one of the rare 3-quarter NBA Finals games because we're looking at the ends of both benches last night. Every player in uniform, save for Kristaps Porzingis, saw the floor last night in some capacity. We did not see starters in the fourth quarter at all, which is just stunning on this stage at this point in an elimination game. That's not something you expect. We saw the response from Dallas we expected in Game 3, not to this degree. To your point, the third largest margin of victory in a finals game ever. These games are not supposed to be one half of basketball, another half of enhanced pickup. This is not what's supposed to happen on this stage. But give Dallas credit, they did not roll over. Luka played defense and did not foul out. So clearly the potential is there. The ability is there. It sucks that it took a night like the other night to bring this out of him. But to his credit, as a superstar player in the league and arguably a top 5 player in the world, even top 3 maybe at this juncture, I think that was big from him. And I think that the role players that did step up last night took the message from that. They're like, okay, he's being a leader. He's going out, playing all out on both ends, and we're going to follow him. And if we die alongside him, we die alongside him. And they fought tooth and nail for the 30 minutes it took to secure another game. So we'll head back to Boston on Monday, and we will see Game 5.
Yeah, there's some things about the Luka part of that I want to unpack a little bit first. I do have the margin of victory. I have the largest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Technically 6 because 34 happened twice. And funny enough, the Boston Celtics were involved in 4 of the 7. However, to their credit,
call that off camera. Yeah.
Yesterday was the first time they were on the wrong end of it. So they technically have done it more times. That's a trivia question for you there. I kind of want to say, I kind of like the fact that what was the largest margin of victory? I don't know. I feel like that's a good trivia showdown question. We're going to go over it though. 34 tied twice. Boston Celtics against the Lakers in 85. I don't have the game, but I do have the year and the margin. Shout out to NBA.com for not including what game it was. But May 27th, 1985, the Celtics beat the Lakers 148-114 by 34. Boston Celtics beat the St. Louis Hawks April 2nd, 1961, 129-95. I love that was a score that we would see nowadays, even in 1961. I love that. I bring that up because it gets really weird here in just a second. Bullets beat the Sonics in 78. And Sonics went on to win that series, too. That's incredible. 117-82. June 4th, 1978, which is a 35-point margin. 36, the Spurs beat the Miami Heat in 2013, 113-77. I forgot about that one. June 11th, 2023, or 2013, excuse me. 38, we already went over that. 39, Boston Celtics beat the Los Angeles Lakers June 17th, 2008. I remember this one vividly, 131-92. And then any guesses on what team did it for the most? It was 42. Margin of victory, 42.
I feel like it's going to involve one of those historic franchises that we've been hearing a couple of times already, the Lakers, the Celtics. I don't think the Spurs would have done it that bad. I'm hoping it's not my lifetime because I'm drawing a blank as far as when that would have fallen.
Depends on when you were born in 1998 or 97 because in 98, the Chicago Bulls, June 7th, so Michael Jordan's famous final year, they beat the Jazz by a margin of 42. The final score, however, was 96-54.
That was a halftime score last night.
Yeah. Right. So I think the Celtics scored 54 in 3 quarters. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a trivia showdown question that I can't use on you now, but I will use it at some point potentially. I think it's a really fascinating thought. So, all right, let's unpack the Luka thing because clearly he heard everything. Now, do I think Brian Windhorst, to the tune of many men or whatever, right? Do I think he needs to do that rant for Tatum and Brown or Joe Mazzulla? No, I don't think that that's the case. I think, could it be fueling? Maybe. But Luka heard the noise. His composure so early was evident. There was a play, I believe it was in the first quarter. If not, it was sometime in the second. It was definitely in the first half where they went to that wide shot where they do. It's kind of a weird angle of the court at a 3/4 line for the timeout. They just kind of 45-degree angle it at the half line. I'm over describing it on purpose, but they do that zoom out, and for about 5 to 10 seconds, you see Luka at the mid-court area, just instructing Derek Lively in such a calm leadership style manner that we haven't seen from him, a couple of times. It's, he's more of the, I'm going to go lead by example and get stuff done on the court. Obviously, that doesn't include some of the foul baiting and foul call conversation around him. But he does, you can tell something flipped for him where he was, more instructional and more conversational and more just a good teammate. And it was really, really interesting to see that even in, a moment where that game was starting to get out of hand in the second quarter, and you're seeing him at these timeouts. I think it was when they went up 18 in the second quarter, if I remember correctly. He's instructing Lively, hey, we're getting this moment. He's at the half court line. He's putting his hands on his hips, showing him what he's trying to tell him. And look, whatever people said about Luka, at the end of the day, some of it was true. Some of it needed to be said, and I think it was fair. But he definitely heard it, and he definitely showed up.
Yeah, I mean, they had him sit down with, I believe it was Malika Andrews between games as like just trying to save his public image after the disaster that was game 3. And whether it was that or just the fact that the one good point I had the last time we jumped on was that it's going to be a wake up call. They literally tossed him out of a game with 4 minutes left because he picked up his fifth and sixth personal within 45 seconds of each other after one of the worst timeouts I've seen in a long time, especially in the NBA Finals from Kidd. But it was there. The offense is very rarely not there for Luca. The defense was there tonight. You mentioned him taking more leadership, making himself more active as far as that goes, and not leading by example, but in a much more positive light this time. And I think the team as a whole responded to it. I mean, Kyrie Irving has the title, has the experience in this stage, but it's Luka's team. That was true before and after Kyrie arrived, and it's no accident they're here. The teams they went through in the West, etc. Although it may not have looked like it through 3 games, this kind of game, not this margin, no one saw this coming. If they did, they're lying. But this is the kind of game, that early just knockout blow that they tried in game 3. Boston came back, cut it to 1 to end of the quarter. After 45 seconds to go in the first quarter, we did not have a single digit basketball game the rest of the game. We had 11 minutes and 17 seconds of a game that fluctuated between 8 10. They were trading threes late in the first quarter. Second quarter on, it was double digits at least. It was as low as 15 middle of the second quarter, I think. And then they just put their foot further on the pedal, and Boston had nothing for it. If that was desperation, closing the gap that we've mentioned about the rosters and how these teams play, whatever it may be. Is it a game late? Probably. If they had done this the other night, it's 2-1 with a game left in Dallas. I think there's a lot more people with raised eyebrows. And I know we've seen this once from, in my opinion, at least in our lifetimes, the greatest player to ever touch basketball, LeBron James, has come back from 3-1. That's not where Dallas started, though. It's 3-0. So it's encouraging going forward for Luka, too. I think this is something he needed to have happen on this stage, just because if they had gotten swept and he had looked anything like he did in game 3, there's people wondering, will he ever win a title? Which is incredibly hard to do at all, but especially when you're fouling out of games, not giving any effort on defense, et cetera, et cetera. So I think all in all, regardless of how the rest of the series goes, I think this was a very big game for Dallas, not only for this team, but the teams going forward that will assuredly include Luka. And I think that this kind of game gives you confidence with a lot of the guys they've put there around him going forward, trying to get a championship.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull like the points in the paint totals now. Shout out to ESPN for being one of the only places that you can actually find in that stat. I mean, I've tried every other place but ESPN because I don't want an ad running in the background constantly when I'm trying to load something. But neither here nor there. That was the difference maker early on. Like there was moments in the first half where like I forget Kyrie Irving's on the floor. Like to his credit, didn't really need to be evident, but he wasn't anyway. And so it was really frustrating because I'm like, okay, this is the game where like if you really want to win, you want Kyrie Irving to be at his best, and he just wasn't. And it was really interesting that's just, I mean, look, I know Luka was incredible. You mentioned at the very first thing you said was guys just were making the shots that they haven't made for weeks now. And it's kind of like, again, it's off-putting to know that like that's kind of right now what I expect from Kyrie Irving, and I could be really dumb here. And he could do the same thing again in game 5 that he's done in the past where he just comes out of nowhere and has a 35-point performance. It just is what it is. But the difference maker was the guys in the paint. It was guys like Derrick Jones Jr. getting downhill, getting into the paint, getting early. It was the stuff I had said earlier in the series talking to you was, hey, the Celtics, if they want to win the series, they need to attack Lively. They need to attack Gafford. They need to get to the paint. And the Mavs did it themselves. ESPN's not loading, so it is what it is. We're not going to have the points in the paint. But the 16 of the Mavs' first 19 points were in the paint. So I pose this question. Is Derek Lively the best lob finisher in the league right now?
I wasn't truly aware of how advanced his capability was with that until I watched that Thunder series, and he had 2 or 3 a night, and there was one from half court that went viral and all this other stuff. It's amazing how quickly, and I say quickly, not like they just played 82 games together, but even as a rookie, you add the stage, the pressure, your season's on the brink, things like that. you really couldn't tell if you just put a GoPro on him. I mean, he was going about his business. He's not obviously one of the best players on this team, but he's one of the more important when you consider what he does in the paint as an anchor defensively, even as a rookie. And offensively, he's not going to give you 40, but he'll clean up the easy ones time and time again. And he's got two excellent passers in Luka and Kyrie to feed into that. So I think that the fact that he can be there, catch and finish, you get the quick twos, those add up. And we saw that a lot last night. And I mean, to your point about the points in the paint, they had 60 points in the paint just last night. On the series, I'm not sure. But I mean, the rebounds, we had Tim Hardaway Jr. hitting shots for the first time in 28 calendar days. He was 5 of 7 from 3. That was a massive lift and a big part of why this game got away. Just because they had threes falling from everywhere, except Luka and Kyrie, ironically. I think they were 1 for 14 in tandem from 3. And if you show me that before the game, I say, okay, when's the parade in Boston? But this Dallas team found a way, to their credit. PJ Washington was hitting corner threes. They gave me war flashbacks. So I think they had help from all sides, and that wasn't something that could be said for a lot of the series. I think Lively ended up with another double-double. He had, I believe, a dozen rebounds off the top of my head. But he was big in essentially what his role is alongside the big two and Luka and Kyrie. So I was very, very impressed with him. But the lob stuff, it is insane how in sync they are. And I'm sure they've missed and, just not been on the same page. I haven't seen it. I think that, and they're so emphatic, especially at home where that crowd is just begging for something to cheer for in this series to this point. I think that's almost an unmeasurable benefit of it, just how much it lights the crowd up and things like that. So I think that was a big boost for them. But yeah, he's quickly ascending the ranks. I don't know how you quantify lob finishers, but Lively.
Just what you watch and what you absorb. I mean, that's why I wanted to ask, because I kind of want to go through it a little bit. Just I don't want to go through every team, but just as a rookie, as impactful as he's been, I just started in alphabetical order and went to the Hawks first immediately because they have a guy like Trae Young who is an incredible passer in the pick and roll or in the lob. So you're not thinking Capella and Kongwu are up there like that.
No.
So that immediately kills that. You think of Boston. Boston doesn't really have a guy that you're excited about in that realm. Shout out to my internet for not being great today. Trying to get standings pulled up here quickly and go through the teams. But Brooklyn, you don't have anybody you're super, super excited about. I would throw Miles Bridges there on Charlotte. Anybody from Chicago I'm forgetting?
I don't think so.
Okay, so Bridges right now is kind of the guy that we've went through so far who might not play another game depending on situations. Let's go the Bulls, Cavs. Mobley's not really like that. Jared Allen is kind of up there, I think, if you think about it.
Yeah, if we're making a list, I think he deserves some place on it.
Denver, Aaron Gordon. Yeah, because of the Jokic lobs, I would put Aaron Gordon on that list.
I like that, yeah.
I'm just going through because I don't think the list is very long. The Pistons, no. I'm not ready to put Jalen Duren on there yet because it's too early, but he'll probably be one of the most athletic Derek Lively types here in the next couple of years. The Warriors, I wouldn't put Kevon Looney on that list by any stretch of the imagination. Rockets, no. Pacers, maybe I'm missing a Pacer here, maybe, but no. Clippers, no. Okay.
Not Zubats, yeah.
Lakers, Anthony Davis, maybe on a really good year.
Yeah, but you hold your breath every time he goes up for it, so I don't know if that counts.
Memphis, Ja feels like the right guy to put on that team on this list, but I would say
if we
no.
can get him on the court for 2 weeks in succession, then sure, I think he's on that list.
Bam, I'm not there with because he's 6'8", maybe 6'9" in shoes. Giannis, I mean, come on, can't make this list without Giannis. Let's just finish this because it's really interesting. I think I've only gotten 4 names down, and then we'll read it and see if we're right. So Timberwolves, no. Well, Gobert actually. Gobert's a pretty strong. He kind of has clumsy.
Yeah, it's just there's not as much. It just does not look the same as when Lively does it. I'll say that.
Okay. Pelicans. There's a name we both want to say, but
same thing as AD. Like, you don't want him to jump that high in the air.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Knicks. I don't think so. No to the Knicks. Thunder. Anybody that you would put
Hartenstein
on the
next
list?
year.
Free agency baiting there a little bit. The Magic, I wouldn't even put Paolo on that list yet because he's more of a free flowing
He does a
creator
lot
right
more.
now.
Right.
Philly, no. Phoenix, no. Portland,
They're all too
no.
old.
Sacramento, no. Yeah, Sacramento, no. The Spurs,
I mean, every time Wembanyama touches the ball, I
yeah.
mean, I
Listen,
don't care what he's doing. It
I'm
doesn't
putting it
matter.
on there. I'm putting it on there for the formality of it. Toronto,
Uh,
no, they don't even have enough. They don't. I don't think, they don't have a regular roster right now.
do they have a
Utah,
guard to
no.
get that there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Utah, no. Yeah, and then Washington.
I mean, we
Okay.
might miss people, but I feel like it's one of those things that you're going to think of the guys pretty quick, just
The
because of
point is
how electric
at
those players
worst case
are.
scenario, he's in the top 6 as a rookie right
Yeah.
now.
Oh yeah.
So, as long-winded as that was on purpose because that shows you how important he is. And even if they
Mhm.
can attack him defensively because of lack of inexperience, he's still able to go up on guys. He blocked Xavier Tillman in the first half. My whole
Right.
point was long-winded. Like my whole point was Derek Lively right now is so impactful for what Dallas needs to do offensively. Where if Luka's
Mhm.
getting, because they're the way the Boston Celtics are defending Luka and Kyrie is they're essentially not sending any doubles. They're just letting these
Right.
guys go one-on-one. That's the first time that it's came back to bite them. And so it allows guys like Lively to have these catches around the rim. And when he's this good, all you have at this point are Bridges, Jared Allen, that's Miles Bridges, Aaron Gordon, Giannis, and Victor. And if we're being real with each other for a second, I would probably take 2 of those guys off the list potentially, and you're probably looking at Derek Lively being one of the best guys around the rim in general. So it's
Top
something that they
5.
finally took advantage of. It was like I think they said fourth. That was like his first lob attempt in like 4 games or something like that. First lob like finish or whatever. And I'm like, that's just not. You're not putting him in positions to succeed if you're not getting him the ball in those spots. That was my
It's
whole
not what
point.
got him to the finals either. Yeah. So I like
Right.
that.
Porzingis' absent was severely felt. Like we have to address that. I know you brought it up briefly earlier, but the lack of rim protection, the lack of shooting when Boston got into like late sets, like in the shot clock. There's just times where I'm
Right.
like, it was glaringly obvious. I'm like, what is Boston feeling here? What are they missing? Like, he even had that play where they swung it around a bunch. It was beautiful ball movement. Tatum got it across. I don't remember who took 3. I think it might have been Horford, and the shot clock expired, and that was kind of a huge turning point there in the game. That play, if you have Porzingis, you just shot that ball for like 5 seconds before because it would have been up at the
Right.
top with Porzingis. You wouldn't have had to force it across the entire court, cross court kind of over the head pass to even get that there. Porzingis is waiting at the top unless they're face guarding him. I don't know what you would do otherwise, but you can't face guard a guy who's 7'3" who can put it on the floor. I mean, you just can't. So they would have taken that shot. I don't really have a question around Porzingis' absence, but like, can they win? Like, obviously, we know they can win the game without him. They did in Game 3, but was there something you saw from the Porzingis thought that just may give them even more trouble in Game 5 if they don't figure it out?
Is really like you don't realize how impactful he is until he's not there, and they kind of rallied around it in Game 3, not having him. But eventually, you know, the holes in your team that absence creates are going to be exploited. They had the tape from Game 3. They're probably looking at things like, oh, if we do things this way, attack the rim more, we can get away with it. That game just ultimately got away from them largely in Game 3 until that massive run. But I mean, I don't love how they went about activating him. Like, he's in a uniform, he's eligible, but we're going to use him in certain situations as necessary. And he's out. Just say he's out. I don't understand. If he wasn't coming in a 40-point game, he's never going to come in. So I don't know, one, how that verbiage is even allowed. They've been pretty strict with injury reports, finally, which is more of a, people that bet on these games are complaining about more than anything. But he's out. I don't think he plays Monday, and I think it's borderline safe to assume he's out for the rest of the series, however many games that entails, the maximum of, at this point, 3. But I mean, obviously, the guys in the locker room know if he's going to play or not. That much is clear. The way they announced he was in yesterday told me he was out point blank. And again, it was the 3rd most out of hand finals game in the history of this league as it approaches 80 years old. So there is no situation where he's going to come in the game. To your point, they're more than capable of winning games without him. They did it a large part of the season, the entirety of the postseason, essentially. But it things like Lively, knowing his role, his place as a rookie, realizing he can be the third or fourth best player on this Dallas team, but his impact as far as what his role provides for the team is up there with any player on the court as far as what they deliver and how key it is to their teams. And if Porzingis is not there to try and counter that, I think they have problems. Is that going to turn into our series predictions being right? No, but I think that I don't know if we're talking game 5 if Porzingis plays last night. I know you look at a 38-point game and be like, well, that's easy. But I just think that they got exploited so badly defensively that it's a fair thing to bring up. So, he is not the most important player on the Celtics, but what he brings to them and what lack of replacement they have for what he brings to them is an issue. And this Dallas team, yes, they look terrible for large parts of 3 games, but they got through what people were calling the best West of all time. They went through the 1 seed without home court. They beat Minnesota handily, who just knocked off the defending champs. So I think you can say a lot about the path for each team. It doesn't really matter. They're here, they're playing. But yeah, I think that the Porzingis thing is an issue. If this was 2-1, I'd be ringing alarm bells, I think, for Boston. But by virtue of their 3-0 cushion to start, 2-0, they got the winning game 3. So I think as the series plays out, I think they're fine. But they are very, very fortunate to have started this sans Porzingis stretch even 1 win, 1 loss.
Yeah, people are going to probably overreact to the 38-point difference if Porzingis is in there, but let's not sugarcoat it. He was a top 5 rim protector statistically this year, and maybe half of the, and I got it pulled up here, maybe half of the, I don't know, the 11 points from Derek Lively near the rim, half of those don't go in. Maybe half of the Dante Exum shots don't go in. He was 2 for 4 from 3, but he was attacking the rim as well. Tim Hardaway Jr., that doesn't affect that probably at all. Derek Jones Jr., albeit he was more aggressive, he was attacking the rim. It wasn't a ton, but it was definitely more than what he's given really all playoffs, at least from that standpoint. Having Porzingis there isn't going to hurt by any means. It neutralizes Gafford as well a little bit better. All little things around the margins. It doesn't change 29 and 21 from Luka and Kyrie, respectively there.
Right.
One thing I was going to bring up that I didn't earlier that I think is important for how this series could look moving forward from a guy like Luka going into the Garden, different refs, because people were going to make the jokes about Scott Foster and being the series extender. But Luka and Kyrie extended the series. It just is what it is.
I don't think the stats even back that up necessarily with Foster.
I know. It's just
there was 3 or 4 games this postseason alone where he was officiating an elimination game and the series ended. So it's funny. It plays well on social media, which is why it comes up time and time again. But Scott Foster's not winning a Finals MVP, so it's just not going to happen.
The thing to look for, I was going to spin it this way instead of bringing this up earlier when we talked about Luka, hearing the noise and learning from it. I'll spin it this way because I think it's understood the same. Luka got his first foul with 6:40 left in the first. It looked very similar, eerily similar to what his 6th was in game 3, and he was calm and he owned up to it immediately. So I know that at home, right after it happened in game 3, because we're talking a 1-day turnaround in there, I know that there's factors that would tell us, okay, he just had to be that level-headed that early on to kind of change things up. But if he can do that Monday in Boston, he seems unfazed 90% of the time by places and by other things, but other than the calls on the floor, that's obviously a thing that's become a very big sticking point for him, talking about him. But if he can do that exact composure I'm talking about in Boston and have a performance that's better. Because look, he wasn't incredible today. He didn't have to be 29, 5, and 5 with 3 steals. The 3 steals were a lot of choice steals in passing lanes, but really wasn't giving up anything else otherwise. Once it got out of hand, it's hard. Yeah, exactly. And it's not, 29. I know the first half was basically the equivalent of if that game was close, he would have done that in the second half. We just gave the assumption because he's that kind of player. You have to assume that he's gonna do those fourth quarter, third quarter performances. My point is
Mhm.
just keep an eye on Luca early on in game 5 on Monday, because if his composure is very similar and Boston comes out kind of walking on eggshells a little bit and doesn't take control of the game, because Joe Mazzulla's whole point was in the locker room when they showed the, I think it was like right after the game started, they showed the in locker room stuff where the guys are talking in the locker room, and
Right.
Mazzulla was like sticking to the game plan was their big thing, like sticking to their tendencies, which clearly came back to bite them today, right? So if they can take more control and be more aggressive, I think Boston can win game 5. But if it comes down to Luka keeping his composure and him having that kind of game, Boston's going to have some trouble.
Yeah, I mean, to the point about 3 quarters, Luca in the fourth quarter in the first 3 games was bad by his standards, by anybody's standards, the best player on the team, whatever. 8 points on 3 of 15 shooting. That is, if you had asked me to guess the player with that fourth quarter stat line, it would have taken me 9 guesses probably to get to him. But to his credit, if you beat a team so bad you sit the whole fourth, then it doesn't really matter. I don't think we'll see that again this series from either team. Honestly, I have too much respect for both teams involved. But I think it's the composure piece of it. I'll say it again. It was a wake up call in game 3. It looked so bad. Again, they trotted him out to ESPN in one of his 2 off days and had him do essentially a puff piece about how he realizes that's not winning basketball. And if he acts like that, he's never going to win a title. And I still think it's too late for him to win a title this year. But if he can replicate anything close to how he had that team playing last night as a leader, and playing, he was an ethical scorer last night to pull from JJ Redick. I think it was in game 2 he said that. But that's a sign for me that going forward that the hype is real, and that's something that gets fleshed out in this series. Like, your career is defined by if you can get here and if you can win here, fair or not. Your entire career, however long it is, however amazing it is shrunk down to what you can do in this one best of 7 if you can even get here. That's just how difficult it is, honestly. So I was very impressed by it. I'm eating a lot of my words that we had on here after game 3. That tape is what it is. He should throw it in the trash and never watch it again. He clearly watched it. He responded to it. And again, that's why he's a top 3 player in the world. His ability to, realize where his game was lacking and how it hurt his team and caused them to lose. And he turned around in 48 hours and put on one of the best performances we've seen from him. And then to your point about the environment, he has ended the Clippers franchise 4 different times in their building. We saw him beat the Suns by 40.
Not in the new dome, he hasn't. Not in the new dome, he hasn't. Not in the Intuit Dome.
I pray year 1 that is a first round matchup. I pray.
It'd be so fun. Hey, they've got to get to the playoffs first. Like at the Clippers next year.
That's
I'm sorry, I'm not looking ahead here, but there's some real interesting West standings conversations depending on health and depending on, there's really contract situations.
Spots, so,
yeah, and they're one of the teams that has some contract things to figure out this year too.
Right, starting with Paul George, but yeah. So I think
you saw that, right? You saw the Paul George
the side eye
interaction.
Embiid,
yeah, that was interesting. It was
the two Kings is not getting out of the first round on the same team. Whatever. So I think that the Boston environment, it will affect Kyrie more. We saw it firsthand. He has lost, I think, 12 or 13 straight games in TD Garden since he was stomping on the logo.
for 12.
He'll say he was scuffing his shoes. No, he wasn't. Just like he was scratching his head with his middle finger. All those just coincidences we see when he enters that building. But so I think it's more important for Kyrie to respond to the environment in this next game because it could be the end of their season. I think Luka has shown an ability to kind of shut out that noise and focus all of his energy on either basketball or screaming at the officials. But I saw a lot of basketball last night, and I was very impressed with that. So I have a lot more faith in his ability to walk in there and seize momentum if the Celtics, per their MO, just kind of screw around and wait for the other team to give up, which does not happen, especially not in the finals. So I think the pressure, honestly, for Dallas is on Kyrie Irving because we saw him in the first 2 games. He was bad. And I don't say that to be disrespectful. I say that with as much respect as possible for how he played all year, all postseason. He is a champion. So we've seen
totally fair.
And right. And what he showed us through 2 games from the bar he set for himself was garbage. So I think the most pressure, even including Boston's roster, with as much pressure as on them to win this series and shut this down now, I think all eyes are going to be on Kyrie Irving, certainly from the road fans, but also objective people like me and you just watching the game for the game and potentially the end of the NBA season. So I think Kyrie Irving is going to be, I won't say the X factor, he's better than that, but the person who will decide if we get a game 6 or not, I think ultimately will be Kyrie Irving.
Like I said earlier, he can't disappear. Like I can't have stretches where I
No.
legitimately forget he's off the floor, on the floor.
Right.
This has less to do with this game, but it did happen in this game, and I should have brought this up earlier potentially. That shot fake foul, where guys all over the league do it, but I just want to make it vehemently clear how much I hate it. I understand that it's a strong tactic. It doesn't affect anything that the NBA rule changes did recently about the foul baiting and stuff like that, going up into contact. Whenever a guy pump fakes a three or head fakes or however you want to call it, and then the big, typically it's a big that does this, that falls for it, but it happens a lot. They jump and they almost, momentum, you're 7 foot, you're big, you're tall, you're wide, you fall forward. Like it just is what it is, right? And they jump, they fall forward, and then that guy, there could be 5 feet of separation still because of the head fake. And Luka and many other guys across this lovely league will shoot their three in an unnatural motion towards the guy falling towards them. It's my least favorite play right now in all of basketball, and that's something that like 5-10 years ago, you get the guy off the ground, you're going to the basket. It's that simple. Now, obviously, is that easier for Kyrie to do because of speed and angle change? Yes. Than a guy like Luka? Of course, is my point. Guy like Luka, bigger, heavier, wider, you're going to want him to shoot that instead of go around. But Trae Young does it. Kyrie does it. Every player. Jason Tatum did it in Game 3.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a fix or a solution. That's not what we have time to do here today. But I just want to make it abundantly clear how ridiculous I think it is and how I stop looking for 2 minutes at a time when it happens because I know 3 free throws are coming. I know a commercial's coming. Like I'm like, you know what? This is stupid.
3 minutes to. Yeah.
It's honestly TV. It's for TV at this point. Like TV gets a free commercial after the first free throw, and guys get rest. Like I get it. It's more than just jumping and doing. Like it's just I despise it. It's infuriating.
There's something to be said with the skill involved it takes to get a defender in the air. When you create contact after that, that's not basketball.
It takes away all of it for me.
It just, you negate, again, the skill it takes to get a defender in the air, both feet in the air. Chris Paul did it. Steph Curry did it. Trae Young does it. Tatum, Luka, Kyrie. The only solution is to stop calling it, to be clear. You just don't call it. But it is a lot more complex than that. Obviously, there's contact. We're going to see calls. This is not the stage to fix this. I think you have to keep it consistent with how you've been calling it. If not the season, then the postseason, or at least within a series, we see some fluctuations and things. So I think that, they've been trying to fix it since we were in high school, 2015, 2016, when Steph was doing a lot of it. And, Draymond and his angle of his legs and where they landed. So I think it's been a problem for a long time. The players, to their credit, have evolved how they do it to fit just inside the gray area. So as competitors, I find no fault in doing it. If they're going to call it, absolutely do it. You can't tell guys to not take essentially right now a free foul if you get a guy in the air and jump into him. Sometimes they make the shot. It's a 4-point play, which is huge. So if you're telling guys to pass up 3 free throws, 2 free throws in the NBA finals, I can't find a case for that. But for like the 6th off season in a row, something needs to be done definitively, not like a tweak, because that has not worked. Not thinking if we leave it alone, they'll stop doing it. The game will evolve past it. It won't. It hasn't. The best players in the world are doing it. Because they know what comes after that, whether they want rest, whether they want the free throws, whether they want the free timeout, the media pause, whatever you want to call it. It's frustrating to watch. It's the equivalent of flopping in soccer to me. It's that unwatchable. We get 10 of the best players in the world on the floor at any given time, and to have the game screech to a halt because of stuff like that is just mind numbing. But, it's been around the league for almost a decade now, if not a decade. And it's clear they're not that concerned with it, at least from the office of Adam Silver, because if they were, it would have stopped by now. And I know that there's flopping fines and things like that, but I mean,
I can tell
it
you
is
who wouldn't have put up with
contact.
this.
Oh, yeah. God rest his soul.
His name
Absolutely
is
not.
Stern, comma David. Okay, like when you said Adam Silver's desk, I was like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it can be stopped. I mean, David, comma Stern,
Yeah.
parentheses.
Ruling with an iron fist, not
Yes.
gambling interest. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, that is one of the more like old man yelling at clouds takes I've had with the league for the last. I mean, I'm in my 20s, but I mean, it's just I can't watch it. I don't care that. I'm sure Durant, Westbrook did it when I was watching them on the Thunder. This isn't like every team but the Thunder should
I'll
get
defend Kevin Durant for a
penalized for
second.
it.
Durant doesn't do it. Durant doesn't do it because he doesn't have to because of the way he's built. Like he has a supreme advantage. Now, does Russ, when he used to do those threes where like the ball would get like I don't call it kicked, but like exactly. I'm trying to paint the picture, right? Like we're watching it on the west side of the court, right? So if you're looking on TV, west side of the court, right? The ball would get swung and he would catch it almost and he's not this kind of shooter, but he would do this a lot, even back in those good days.
That didn't stop him. No.
He would catch it in stride, like catch it from the guy in the corner. He would catch it in stride and he would turn towards the basket on the west side, right? And when he would do that, he would swing his entire body except for his head, basically. Like even the chest would poke forward and he would just like kick himself forward 5 feet. Would he do that? Sure. But a lot of guys in that swinging motion who don't shoot very well, he kicks his feet a lot. Like it just is what it is. Very Sean Marion-esque a little bit. Like even though he was basically, he swung his whole, we're not getting into Sean Marion's shooting mechanics here today, but Sean Marion's body, like basically
a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. He basically jumped 4 feet forward to land and then put 2 feet down. It was very odd. But Russ would do those. Like Kevin Durant, I'll defend because there's just guys that don't do it. Like even LeBron doesn't do it, and he's not built like Kevin Durant. Like guys don't kick themselves forward a lot in those situations. But again, sometimes I'm referring to like a shot versus like what I'm referring to with Luka, and we're on the same page about it. It's just a roundabout way to talk about it. Like it's the obvious. I know that guy is coming, so instead of taking advantage, and either way, but again, I'm not defending the fact that I'm not disputing the fact that it's not taking advantage of the situation that you got the guy into. It's how hard it is to watch, knowing that for 70 years to take advantage of that was to get the space and attack the rim, or at least go around the guy and then figure it out from there. Good defense, collapse, whatever. Now it's I took advantage. I got the guy off the ground. Instead of going around him, I'm jumping forward into him for three free throws. Yeah. So anyway, in a roundabout way, that's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like Steph and you shoot 90 whatever percent from the free throw line, that's as valuable as a play as you can get, especially if his shot's not there for some random night, which is rare. But again, competitively, you can't ask players to not shoot guaranteed free throws. That they're not going to, number one. And that's just not the solution. It comes from above the court, and we've yet to see a perfect way to address it. We may not ever, but to your point about why do I have to keep watching this? I'm in lockstep with you there.
All right. In closing, a couple of things to think about. Assuming the Celtics don't have their fewest points in a half under Joe Mazzulla in the regular season.
35?
Yeah, 35. Fewest points and a half under Joe Mazzulla in the regular season or the playoffs, which is what happened in Game 4. Assuming that doesn't happen, and then assuming we don't have another first quarter where Luka and Kyrie have 22 and the Celtics have 21, okay? Like, just assuming those two things don't happen, I'm asking it this way, right? I don't want to ask you a prediction straight up because it just isn't productive after what just happened to us 2 days ago. So, what percentage chance are you starting to feel like the Mavs can start to begin this comeback? I'm not saying do they do it. I'm saying how big of a chance are you thinking that Game 6 is coming? And then what does Boston have to do to prevent that? I think is the way I would ask it in closing.
I mean, we defied history boldly in picking this series, so I will rely on that. Teams have never come back from 0-3. The fact that Boston has 2 of these next 3 at home, I know their home court advantage is not some vaunted statistic, but just the pure, like, how in the world could you possibly screw this up? Even as I might get this literally trademarked, the lowest floor 60-win team in the history of basketball. which was on display last night. Tatum was minus 33. He's the only player in NBA history to have 2 games plus minus wise that bad, and that's not some all-encompassing stat, but things didn't go well for Boston last night. So I think that I'm not saying the Mavs can't win a close game against Boston. They had several chances and have not capitalized. They're not going to get another 38-point win. I guarantee you that. I don't think Boston will either. I think that it's going to take 70 from Luka and Kyrie Monday night to get this done. Just because what little good things we've seen from Dallas's role players, I don't think would be good enough to offset, say, 50 from Luka and Kyrie. And I hate to reduce the series down to that, but when you have a team like the Celtics so good, 1 through, I guess, 14 with Porzingis hurt now, that's just kind of what it is. That's what you have to do to overcome a roster that is better than you. And you have 2 all-world players and then guys like Lively who are trying to do their best to close the gap. The foul baiting stuff from Dallas, we'll probably see a lot of it in Game 5 because, again, as poorly as they've shot free throws, that is the ultimate equalizer. Points with the clock stopped and no hand in your face. So I'm expecting to see shades of crybaby Luka in Game 5, unfortunately. I think he'll be a lot more even-keeled, much more like Game 4 rather than Game 3. But I think with the season on the line, you kind of have to drop the whole feeling of shame thing and just get what you can get from these officials. As tired of him as they may become, I don't expect him to foul out anymore. But I think we're going to have to see Luka put on a performance that he very well may have last night if he was asked to come in the game past the third quarter. So I think it would take a game that we would remember for a long time from him and Kyrie in tandem, because it can't be just one. We've seen that. They don't win games when one of them plays to their true potential. The other one does not. They were 0-3 in those games. And it took a bit of a perfect storm shot making wise from Dallas last night, especially from 3. Tim Hardaway Jr. doesn't make a shot in a month, and all of a sudden he's Steph Curry. I mean, that's not something you can depend on. So I think it's going to start with the main 2. Any easy flushes you can get with Lively, the rim protection he provides. Like I said, I don't think Kristaps will be back Monday or Game 6 or Game 7. Should we even get to that point? So Boston's gonna have to figure out a way to win without him. They've done it once in this series. They've done it almost the entire playoffs to this point. And you didn't ask me, but I think the series ends in Boston. I think for all the things we could do to make fun of Boston, and this would be the most Boston Celtics of this kind of era thing to do, to blow a 3-0 finals lead. And you do that one game at a time. But I think after one loss, I think they'll refocus, they'll reset. I heard a great line from Doc Rivers. He jumped on the Bill Simmons podcast after Game 3, and he said that Celtics team kind of sniffed the title. They thought, wow, we're going to go up 3-0. Historically, that means the series is over, just a matter of when. And they gave up that 22-2 run, and it shocked them. But they won the game, which is not something we've seen from these Celtics teams in the past.
Yep,
I don't even know if they win this game in the regular season. So I think that, too, I'll give Dallas a 10% chance of winning this series. Reality, it's like 2 or 3. But I have so much respect for Luka and Kyrie and their ability to create something just insane between the 2 of them to where we could get – I mean, I'm telling you, one game at a time. It's like that – I forget, was it Kevin Pillar on Boston? Like, don't let us win that first game. They were down 3-0 to the Yankees in, I believe, 04.
So.
I'm going to get killed if I missed that year. But
it was 2004. I don't know if it was the right player, but doesn't think it matters at that point.
These things happen one game at a time. LeBron in 16, one game at a time, down 3-1. So if you're Boston, don't dare Kyrie, don't dare Luka to do it, because they will do it, and they'll do it in your building. They'll go back to Dallas. They'll do it again. And there's nobody in the world going to pick the Celtics in Game 7 if it gets there, given how this series began.
How it would have gotten to that point to get there.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's fair.
There will be no faith among anybody in Celtics green in that building. The players at that point are going to be shell-shocked. Joe Mazzulla, does not have enough experience, I don't think, to bring that train back from a mile off the rails at that point. Not that Jason Kidd is some Phil Jackson disciple, but at that point, all the pressure is on Boston. It's already there. So y'all better win Monday. I'm just telling you, if we do 2 more of these, something bad's going to happen.
Or something bad did happen to get there, because at this point, I think that's
Right.
what it's going to take. To follow up your train analogy here, I think Boston finally just steps out in front of it and gets it done. I really do. I'm with you. I think the last 5 minutes was beautifully said, because it answered the question of the percentage, which I think 10 is totally fair with the respect to those two. I think it's, I don't know if there's anything I can add to it that would put us in any less or more of a position to be embarrassed after, hopefully Tuesday evening when we record it. Selfishly, I'd love to see more basketball. Again, I know what that would mean historically. I know what that would mean as well. But I also will just, as you go to plug in just a second, I'll close with this. Whether we do this after Game 5, or whether we do this after Game 7 or somewhere in between, just make sure, because we're not doing it that night, just make sure that you watch NBA TNT one more time, because Charles Barkley, obviously in Game 4, officially announced that he is retiring from talking about basketball. And whether you love him, whether you hate him, I'm not going to enjoy games on TNT or, well, in the likes of NBC after this now, but I'm not going to enjoy not having Charles Barkley on TV. So I hate to leave you on that note, but whether we talk after Game 4 or Game 7, let people know where they can find you one more time, and we'll get out of here.
Quickly on Chuck, it's a shame that the shifting sands of cable television and rights and all that is going to ultimately kill inside the NBA. Even if you're the big old women down in San Antonio, I think you've enjoyed a lot of the 25 years that Chuck has given TNT and what that show has turned into. So I'm going to be locked in next season, just knowing that it's one show closer to the end of it, unfortunately. But, like these finals and like these shows, we'll enjoy it while we have it. So on the way out, I've got a podcast with my college roommates, went to Clemson during the peak of their college football mini dynasty, I guess. It's called the 1009 podcast. We're going to try and eulogize the baseball team, just short of Omaha. Unfortunately, they could not jump into the ACC versus SEC festivities going on in Omaha. Trevor's Wolfpack play at 2:00 today. So we're going to try and sneak in a Clemson series recap, Omaha preview over the weekend, have that out to you the next couple of days, just to kind of give our thoughts on what we've seen, what we want to see, and how we think the dust settles up in Omaha. Tennessee got by Florida State last night on a terrible check swing call. So, tinfoil hat time. The SEC is getting a lot of help from the Angels in the outfield and, the league office or whatever you want to call it. So, look for that on Twitter.
They got a lot of help by the committee, too, to be clear. They got a lot of help from the committee this year, too. So we'll leave that alone.
They're not slick. But we're on Twitter at the 1009. It'll be an orange and purple logo. About 600 followers on Twitter there. We've enjoyed the steady growth of that. So if you want to add to that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, everything for you guys will be linked in the description below. I always enjoy doing this with you, even more so on the 5-year anniversary of Anthony Davis becoming a Los Angeles Laker. So with that being said, this has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and we will at least one more time see you after Game 5.